Hello students, I hope you are staying safe and healthy. I am teacher Ibrahim and I'll be your teacher for General Studies and Communication Skills while you are at home. This program is brought to you by Rwanda Education Board in partnership with the Mastercard Foundation and Inspire, Educate and Empower Rwanda. As you are aware, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Rwanda has suspended activities that essentially bring many people together, and all unnecessary movements are banned to prevent the transmission of COVID-19. Schools have also been affected. Now, as you are aware, this is the subject that trains us in the skills of critical thinking, research and problem solving, creativity and innovation, communication and cooperation. We need these skills. They are vital in order for us to become efficient and effective citizens of our beautiful country of Rwanda, our continent of Africa, and the world as a whole. Now, as the lesson goes on, I'll expect you to write down some notes. So make sure you have a notebook and a pen. And because these notes will help you in your revision. And I also ask that you ensure that your environment is free from disruption and noise. All right, I hope you have your notebook and your pen. Our topic is going to be democracy and good governance. This is unit 2 of your students' book. Those of you who have it. Under this topic, we will be able to analyze and appreciate the role of democracy in enhancing good governance. Now, our topic is going to be divided into 6 subtopics. Number 1 is, I want you to write this list down. Number 1 is concept of state. Concept of democracy is going to be number 2. The concept of democracy. Number 3, the concept of good governance. And number 4 is state governance and the 3 powers. State governance and the 3 powers. Then we shall go to number 5, which is the role of democracy in promoting individual citizenship. And then lastly, we shall be looking at the role of democracy in enhancing good governance. The role of democracy in enhancing good governance. Today's subtopic is going to be the concept of state. We are going to try and understand what a state is and to appreciate the importance of state. First, we should define the term state. So I want you to think about what a state is, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Thank you for thinking and coming up with those wonderful ideas. I believe you have managed to think about some wonderful ideas of what a state is. Now I want you to compare your ideas with the one I'm going to give you. The definition, I want you to write it down. A state is defined as a sovereign political power. A state is defined as a sovereign political power. We spell sovereign as S-O-V-E-R-E-I-G-N. S-O-V-E-R-E-I-G-N. A state is defined as a sovereign political power. I hope we are there. Comma, the territory of a community. The territory of a community. You spell territory as T-E-R-R-I-T-O-R-Y. Or territory considered as an organized political community. I will say it again so that we understand it better from the beginning. A state is defined as a sovereign political power, the territory of a community, or territory considered as an organized political community. Now, there are some few words in that definition that I am sure may be new to some of us. I want us to look at them one by one so that we can add them to our vocabulary. You need to remember it is important to add new words to our vocabulary every now and then, because vocabulary is all the words that we know in a language. And we don't just need to know these words, but we need to be able to use them. So let us add these words to our vocabulary, and this will help us understand the term state much better. Okay, the first one is sovereign. This means self-governing or independent. Sovereign means self-governing or independent. The second one, I want you to write this: political power. A political power is unorganized government. A political power is unorganized government, and the government has the executive, the judiciary, and legislature, which, as you may know, are the three branches of government. Now, the third word that I want you to add to your vocabulary is territory. Territory is the geographic area belonging to or under the control of the government. For instance, all the land and the geographical features within the borders of Rwanda make up the territory of our country, which is under the control of the government of Rwanda. And these are the three words that I wanted you to add to your vocabulary today. And now that we know the key words, it is easier to understand what a state is. So I'll repeat the definition for you to be able to understand it better. A state, as we said, is defined as a sovereign political power, the territory of a community, or territory considered as an organized political community. Now, this means that any self-governing or independent country is considered a state. This means that any self-governing or independent country is considered a state.
Come along and play with us.
Now, the second question you need to ask yourself is, what makes a state? Again, I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. And I believe, like in the first instance, you came up with some good ideas. I'm sure you will come up with some wonderful ideas, or even now. So think about what makes a state. All right. I'm sure you've done a wonderful job. I believe you have come up with some wonderful ideas. So, bravo. Good job to you. Let us look at what a normal state must have. And I want you to compare what I'm going to say to you with what you have come up with in your mind. A state, first of all, usually has people. These people are the ones that we call the citizens or civilians, but normally we call them citizens. Now, for example, the people in the territory of Rwanda are called the citizens of Rwanda. A state must have a territory. You cannot consider yourself a state if you don't have a territory. A state must have boundaries. And within these boundaries, everyone within the boundaries of this territory is considered a civilian of that territory. And then the people who live within this territory and within these boundaries must have what we call a leadership. This leadership is normally provided by the people elected by the citizens and others who are appointed by the elected leaders to serve the people within the state. For example, the president is elected by the people, and after he is elected, he will appoint ministers who will help him in serving the people during his time in office. And now, when he appoints these people, he expects them to serve the people or to help him serve the people as ministers, maybe of education, of health, minister of sports and culture, minister of different ministries, because they are different ministries. Now, this means that the president will be free to remove these appointed officers from office if he discovers that they are not serving the people as well as they should. And together, the president and his ministers, the ministers he has appointed, form what we call the cabinet, which is the executive branch of a state government. And then, like we said, the citizens, the territory, and the boundaries. What a state needs to have the legitimacy to exercise power within its borders. So after you have the citizens, you have a territory and clearly mapped out boundaries or borders. Now you can consider yourself to be a state. And then you can exercise powers within these borders. You can control whatever is in that border. Now, the word legitimacy means legal or lawful. Nobody is going to go anywhere in any court to blame you or to blame the government of Rwanda for mining the minerals within the territory of Rwanda, because the state government has the authority to do whatever it wishes with the minerals within the state territory, as long as it is doing this on behalf of the people that elected this government. Now, all states have laws. Some of them are written, while others are not written. And these laws are put in place to guide their day-to-day operations. Every country has those laws. These laws are supposed to guide the operations of the state. Whatever people do must be guided by these laws. Now, the most supreme law in any country is called the Constitution. Now, the laws of a country, including the Constitution, are made by what we call the legislative branch of the government. The state government must have a branch called the legislature. This branch is the one that makes the laws that govern, or the laws that must be followed by everyone who lives within the borders or within the territory of, for example, the state. And in Rwanda, we have what we call the parliament, which has two chambers. The first one is the high chamber, or the topmost chamber is the Senate. And then we have, secondly, the chamber of deputies. These people are the ones that are supposed to make the laws. Now, these laws, the laws of the land, are going to be enforced by what we call the judiciary. The judiciary is the third branch of government, and it is headed by a chief justice as the head of the Supreme Court. There is a court called the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the country. And all the judges and the different courts of law in the country are under the chief justice. This is called the third arm or third branch of government. We said we have the executive, we have the legislature, and then we have the judiciary. Put together, they form what we call the state government. Now, those are the things that make up a state. I hope you had these things in mind. And I want you to think, states usually do very many things, and they will do all whatever is within their ability to protect their interests. If a state has interests, or there are things that benefit the people, they will do whatever they can in so many ways to protect those things and ensure that it is only the people within the state territory that benefit from these interests, or the interests of the state are propelled in so many ways. Now the state will do so many things, the state government especially, because they are the ones who are leading us. They will go and make what we call international cooperation, ensure that we have friends outside there with whom we can do business, trade. We have maybe blocks like the East African community within which we can think about sharing ideas of how to protect ourselves, coming up with markets that we can trade with, maybe at a cheaper cost, or at basically even no cost. Now, normally, the most important thing is that the state will strive to protect what we call its sovereignty. I remember I told you sovereignty is independence without which, if the state is not independent, then it cannot consider itself to be a state. Otherwise, if somebody comes and when the white people came here in the first place and colonized Africa, we are not called states. We are simply called colonies. And our leaders who forced themselves on us were called colonial masters. That's why every country needs an army and a police, plus other security agencies whose job is first of all to protect the sovereignty or the independence of the state.
Come along and play with us.
Now, I want you to think about some examples of states. You can think of states in Africa, Europe, Asia, Canada. Think of countries or states that are independent, that govern themselves without any foreign influence. All right, I'm sure you've thought about so many countries, especially starting with our very own Rwanda. We have neighbors. Our neighbors are all independent. None of our neighbors is under any foreign rule. So we shall think of Burundi, we shall think of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, South Sudan, which is considered the youngest country in Africa. You have Ethiopia, all of which are African countries. You have some examples of states from outside Africa, like Canada, Mexico, Brazil, China, India, Italy, Belgium, France, and so many others. All of these states are independent, they govern themselves, and they have a territory, like we said, they have citizens, and they have a leadership, a government, which controls whatever happens within this territory. Now, briefly, I'll take you through the history of how Rwanda was formed, but it's going to be very brief, not like the one you have in your history classes. I want you to use that knowledge to think about how, or to compare, remember how Rwanda became a state. But as a state, Rwanda was formed during the period of European scramble and partition of Africa. In the late 19th century, these Europeans came and invaded Africa and conquered communities and established colonial rule. Rwanda was initially put under German rule, and later it fell under the Belgians. And after some time, of course, Africans got tired of being ruled by foreign powers, and they started resisting the colonial rule in the 20th century, around the early 20th century, the 1920s, 1930s. And this eventually led to the independence of most states, and Rwanda got its independence in 1962. Now, just like Rwanda, many modern African states exist because of European colonialism, like I told you. And during this time, during the scramble and partition of Africa, the colonialists drew territorial borders to map out their colonies. Upon obtaining independence, most colonial boundaries were maintained, and they did not change. So most countries kept the borders that were mapped out by their colonial masters. And they still have those borders up to now. Now, after some time, maybe a state can decide to break up, like in the case of Sudan, where South Sudan, there was a referendum was held, and South Sudan broke off from the main country of Sudan in 2010. And from that time, there's a country called Sudan, and there's another one called South Sudan. Now, I want you to think about the duties of a state for a minute. Think, a state has a number of duties, and I want you to think about them. What is the duty or what is the responsibility of a state towards its citizens? Okay, I believe you have thought about a number of them, maybe 2 or 3, and I hope you are following and enjoying what we are talking about, our discussion, because most of us being in senior 6, we are really big people. I hope we have been joined by even senior 4s and senior 5s. It is wonderful to have everyone listening in. I want to talk about the duties of a state towards its citizens. There's a philosopher called Thomas Hobbes. He's a philosopher, and he came up with, I hope you know what a philosopher is, someone who thinkers, these people who think and really think deeply about ideas and come up with suggestions. Now, he came up with 4 duties that he thought were the duties of a state towards its people. And he said, duty number 1, I want you to write these duties down. Duty number 1 is to defend. The state has the duty to defend the nation against foreign enemies. Say the state has a duty to defend the nation against foreign enemies. And to do this, the state needs an army, such as an army like the Rwanda Defense Forces, whose duty is to protect the country against any foreign enemies who may want to threaten the sovereignty of the state, or who may want to come and threaten the independence of Rwanda, must be fought and defended against by the army. And so the army ensures that Rwanda remains independent and free from any threats that may come from within sometimes and outside the borders. In performing this duty, the army is normally assisted by other security agencies and intelligence agencies, as well as the police. And number 2, Thomas Hobbes thought the state has the duty to preserve peace and internal security. To preserve peace and internal security. Now, that's why the state needs the police, such as the Rwanda National Police, whose duty is, first of all, to keep law and order. When there is law and order, there is definitely going to be peace. And then, secondly, the second duty of the police is to serve and protect the citizens and their property. The police will serve the people and protect their properties and the citizens as well. And in performing this duty, the police is also assisted by other security agencies and intelligence agencies, like I said, as well as the army. Sometimes, to keep law and order, the army may come in to help the police. And then number 3, Thomas Hobbes also thought the state has the duty to allow subjects or the people or the citizens to enrich themselves. To become rich, people should be able to become rich within the state to improve their standards of living. The state has that duty to not only help you, but to allow you to become rich, to have a better life, a better standard of living. To do this, the government will ensure that there is an economy in which each and every citizen has an equal opportunity and the freedom to trade with any person they choose to do so with, as long as they are doing this within the laws put in place by what we call the legislature. I hope you remember. Now, every citizen will have equal rights and opportunities to conduct and participate in activities that will help him or her improve his or her living conditions. Sometimes, with the help of the government can give you a loan to improve your business, to make an investment.
Come along and play with us.
Now, lastly, the state has the duty to allow freedom that does not threaten security. You must remember, the state has to allow you to have freedom, but this freedom should not threaten the security of the state. The state leadership has to ensure that citizens enjoy rights and freedoms of being human. These rights were declared by the United Nations, and every citizen has to enjoy them. However, we must remember that in exercising our rights, we do not interfere or infringe. To infringe is to make other people, to infringe on the rights of other people, to make it difficult for other people to be happy or to enjoy their lives. We should not infringe on the rights of other citizens. For example, as you exercise your freedom of speech, do not insult your neighbors. As you exercise your freedom of movement, do not trespass on your neighbor's premises or property. Don't start trespassing in your neighbor's compound because you are exercising your freedom of movement. Secondly, the citizens must remember to exercise their rights without putting their country's security at risk. For example, as you exercise your right to protest against what you disagree with, because you have that right, but then you must not use violence of any form. As you're protesting, do not protest with violence. You must remember that you should also not associate with enemies of the country as you try to exercise your freedom of association. Now, I want you to think about the different things, the different ways the state of Rwanda or through the government has served its duties to you, towards you. I hope you come up with some good ideas, and as I'll come up with some good ideas, think about them, share them with your friends, and talk about how your country or how the state has performed its duties in your life. Now, we are coming to the end of our lesson, and as we conclude, I want us to review some of the key points that we learned today in our lesson. We have learned that a state refers to a sovereign political power made up of human population, the ones that we call citizens, boundaries, and leadership. And then this state must also have what we call a territory. And then secondly, we have also seen that the leadership of the state has duties of defending the nation against foreign enemies, preserving peace and internal security, allowing subjects to enrich themselves, and allowing freedoms and rights that do not compromise security. And I will leave you with two tasks as I go. I want you to think about what makes you proud of being in the state of Rwanda. And I also want you to research about the concept of democracy and what it means. And I wish you all the best. Please stay home, stay safe, and take care of yourselves until we meet in our next class. You have been such wonderful students, and I hope I see you next time.
Goodbye, 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 teacher. Goodbye, children. See you next time. Goodbye, 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 teacher. Goodbye, children.